As a reminder, there will be no EMIS or EAS reporting for the ELA. The system will submit that information for you. So all you have to do is make sure that your teachers have entered the scores for the students in the system, and the system will provide the reports for the department. There is an optional pilot to be a participant in this year. Those of you that did that during the fall, you're aware of that. There is a difference between the standard ELA and the pilot this year. If you have questions and you need some assistance with regards to policy or practice, we're encouraging you to reach out to ELA help at education.ohio.gov. The window opened and it will close on May 14th. If you need information about policy and guidelines, you can find that on the Department of Children and Youth in the Department of Education's website. And likewise, with the Ohio K-12 Help, the help desk, that is there for support around the technical aspects of the system. We are here to answer your phone calls. You can reach out to us at 844-K-12-OHIO, and you see the number there. Again, we're providing data manager training, we're providing support materials, videos, and you can also, again, reach out and submit a support request, and someone on our team will respond to that, and want to make sure that you are aware of those resources that are available for you.
Enrollments are loaded for each of the data collections in which scores are being reported and entered into the KReady system. So each data collection has its own token that corresponds with each of the assessment windows. So you can see towards the bottom here, we do have spring 2024 and the standard ELA, which is the top regular full data collection, and then a pilot version. Those are both listed in red there for you. If your teachers and your students haven't changed, you still need to upload a new enrollment file with the current data collection token. If there have been any changes, whether it's to your students or your teachers, you need to do that first. So if you have any changes to your students, you're going to upload a corrected student file. And then after that goes through, if there are any teachers that maybe there's changes or anything, I want you to note on here how to update a user manually first. If there are any changes before you upload a teacher file, so let's say a name change or an email change, upload it or go to the user first and manually update them. Then lastly, upload the enrollment file with the corrected data. So I want to go live and I want to show you basically what I've done here, looking at the KReady system and how to re-upload your enrollment file. Now, when I say using the bulk loader and re-uploading an enrollment file, that is mainly for medium to larger districts that have a lot of students that they need to attach the spring token to. So for that, I went ahead and actually just pulled my enrollment file that I did back in the fall, and looking at this to see if there's any changes to my students or to my teachers. As a data manager, that's what you want to look over. So for this, there isn't any changes for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this file. I'm going to change column A because we're not doing the fall token. You need to update it to the correct spring token. So for this spring, I am doing the ELA spring 24. So I will then be copying this all the way down to all of my students listed here. And I want to copy, not fill. So make sure it stays the same. You're going to be doing the same thing you do when you upload any files, is you're formatting for those leading zeros. And those columns are for the district ID. So you want 6 spaces. A lot of districts, organizations start with a 0. They do, you're going to lose that 0. So you format for the leading 0 for both column B and column E. And column H, you're going to format for the date of birth. So I will go through the date of birth here as well to show you how to do that. We also have on our site is how to format for leading zeros And that is also in our additional resources, document information. So I do want to show you this, though, custom. I select this first 0, and then I type in this specific format. So MM \DD\YYYY. That way we have, if it is a month starting with a single digit, it's going to be 07 or 07 for the date, and then the year of 2018, or whatever the year may be. Okay, so once that's done, you want to resave that, and you want to then just minimize it on your screen. Save it somewhere you can easily find it. Go back to your KReady system and select your bulk loader. Upload your file, select your template type. This is the enrollment file. So from here, going to select and find my file. Once I go ahead and attach it, we will go ahead and upload. And what you're looking for is the additions or updates. Okay, so if you happen to add a new student on there, you would look for an addition. You want this to come back complete. Lastly, once you get all of those uploaded, you want to confirm with your teachers that they can now see all of their students in their roster. So the next step is adding users and students. Now this I want to go over is adding them manually. And this is the part where I encourage you to follow along with me. If you have a student that you want to add, you can go through each of these steps. And again, we also have on here is a quick reference guide, and there's a video. And this is also in your additional resources document that you can review at any time on how to add a user manually. So we are going to go back to the KReady system. We're going to go back to our users in our left-hand navigation. Select Add User. You will be entering in their first name, last name, and their email address. When it comes to the password, when you're adding a password manually to a user, you want to make sure that you follow the password requirements. So when you're entering in this manually, you will be entering that in as long as it's following those requirements, but you actually don't have to share this with the user. The system is actually going to send a password email to this user that you create, and so you don't have to share the password. You want to make sure you select the role of teacher and select Save and Open. The user is added. You have one more step. You have to make sure that you add the teacher credential ID. So from here, select Organizations, the drop-down arrow, Districts, and you want to attach them to the correct district. So select Add and the teacher ID. Now this is going to be either the teacher's educator ID number, which is 2 letters and 7 digits, or it's going to be the teacher's email address. So for this teacher, what I did was the teacher email address. So we're just going to go ahead and enter that in there and select Save. Now you're going to see that that teacher is attached to the correct district and has their teacher credential ID attached. Again, we're going to encourage you to follow along with this. If you have a student that you would like to add, we're going to go through these steps. We also have a quick video in our additional resources guide. And again, you can always rewatch this as well. At the bottom here, we do have the data collections again listed. So whether the student is doing the full version, basically it's for your district, your organization, and what you have chosen to do since the fall. Whatever one you have done, you just want to kind of keep with that the entire year. So whether you decided to do the full version, the standard version, or the pilot version. So either way. So we're going to go back to our KReady system and we are going to select students, left-hand navigation. When you're adding students, you're doing not only adding the student, but you're also attaching them to the teacher and to the data collection. First thing first is always going to ask you if you have the state student ID. If you have not received that yet for the student and you're still waiting to get that, the student cannot be entered into the KReady system. So what you want to do is encourage your teacher to record those scores manually. And then when you get that SSID, you'll then be able to enter the student into the KReady system. They cannot be entered without having that state student ID. So that being said, let's go ahead and move forward and add a student, enter in the state student ID. You enter in their first name. The middle name is optional. If you want to, you can. And then the student's last name, the date of birth, the gender, the race, the disability code. Now, the disability code you see listed here as 1 to 16. In the data guidelines document, you will see what each of these represent. And in that document, the link to that is also in our additional resources document that will help you determine which one it is for that student. Select the appropriate one. If they don't have one, you leave it blank. You select your region, will always be Ohio Public Schools, then your district, and your location. If you have a disability code, make sure special education IEP is toggled to the right, as in yes. If the student is an English language learner, you would mark that accordingly. They're all by default marked as no. So this is all looking right. I'm going to go ahead and select Save and Open. Now, once the student is open, you do have more tabs available to you. So your first is you want to associate the teacher. Select enrollments. And here you will see teacher association. Select assign teacher. Find the teacher that you wish to add to. I'm going to add them to my sample teacher 19. Click assign and then finished. Now you see the teacher is attached. But even though the teacher's attached, you need to do one more step in order for the teacher to see that student in their roster. You need to add that data collection. So from this screen, right underneath the box where it says the location, you have the word location and 1 of 1. The location, the word, is actually a hidden little hyperlink and it's underlined. So you want to go ahead and click that. You now see you've gone up to organizations on that left-hand side, okay? And you can also see that you have more tabs for that student. So what you're looking for is that data collection assignment. When a teacher says that they cannot see a student, 99.9% of the time, after you've checked to make sure that the teacher is associated, it's due to this data collection assignment. Select Assign Data Collection. And you, at this time, there's only 2 that you can assign to because everything else has already closed. So you would then select the appropriate one, assign, and then finished. Now that student is added to the teacher, added to the assessment. You just want to confirm with your teacher that they can now see that student in their roster. When I talked earlier about reloading data, we use the bulk loader. Now, some organizations may have just a smaller number of students and want to just make sure each one of them are attached, and they can do that manually to the Spring data token. So I want to show you on that how to do that as soon as you log in. And we're literally just going to stay in organizations, but we're going to go back. We're just going to click on that, and you want to select View Districts, View Locations next to that location. And then you will then, as soon as this comes up, View Students. This is another way to drill down to your students through the organizations to see the list of your students and then double checking if they have the data collection token added. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Chewy the cat. I'm going to open them up and I'm looking at the data collection assignment. And for the spring, oh, well, they were only given the fall and winter. I need to make sure I'm adding them to the spring. So this one was to the pilot. We're going to hit assign and then finished. And now to go back to your list, so you don't have to keep hitting organizations again, in this gray line, it's actually helps you go back. So then you can go back to your students and go to your next student and select open and do the same process again. You have two different reports. You have the data downloads report and you have the SKB ratings report. The first one, the data downloads report, it's an Excel file showing either teachers, students, or enrollments, whichever one you are looking for. You can choose which one. And this is more, this is actually just used to confirm and what actually has been loaded into the KReady system. So you want to confirm and check, has the teacher loaded and what was the teacher loaded with? How was the student loaded? Was all of their information correct? Were they tied to the correct teacher? Were they tied to the correct data token? You can do that by using the data downloads report. And that's available both during and after the assessment window. The second one here is the SKB Ratings Report. This is a file that's going to show teacher-student association and what scores have been entered thus far. So this is used as a data manager. You're using this to monitor who has entered scores for your students for each of the windows. Or the window you're looking at now, let's say you want to look at what happened in the winter window. You can see. You want to look and compare your fall, winter, and then coming up for your spring. This is available both during and after. How to generate a SKB ratings report. If you go down to the reports on that left-hand side and select the drop-down arrow, it's the very first one, ELA SKB ratings report. You choose the data collection that you're looking for. So let's say it's a couple weeks into the spring window and you want to check to see where your teachers are, what scores have been entered. You would pick the correct data token and then go down to the next step. So by default, the filter by point of authority is automatically checked. And when it's checked, it's going to show only students whose point of authority is with that district on that report. If you uncheck it, this is going to show the data manager all the students that have been loaded for the organization district that have been loaded regardless of their point of authority. So for instance, this is very helpful for two organizations who share a student. Let's go with an ESE and a district. However, you may be sharing the student in two entities, two different organizations. So by unchecking that, you can see that regardless of the point of authority. Now, you do have the ability to show observation dates if you want to see when your teachers entered an observation date. You can include inactive students, you can show comments, and you can show artifacts. Then the start date is always the very beginning of the window. So for instance, if we were to run this for the spring, we're going to choose the start date as the start of the window, which is February 15th. Select OK. Your end date is going to be today's date. If it's after the window closed, you just want to use the end of the window. The window usually always starts on the 15th and ends on the 14th. Okay, that's normally, but for this year, for the fall, so let's say we're looking at the fall. Let's go back here. So I want to look at the fall, let's say. So let's go with the 15th there, hit OK. And then the end date there was actually December 1. And then I hit OK. So you're looking for scores in that specific date range. You can choose to do it by location. So this is if you have multiple locations and you want to narrow it down to one location you want to look at. You can choose to look at your district as a whole, and you would see all of the locations underneath that district. Whichever you choose, once you do that, you would select Generate Report, and this will generate the report in an Excel format. Now, this report is going to show differently depending on the data collection. So for the ELA full, the standard version, that is going to be show all 72 SKBs. The SKB ratings report in number 3 here is where I want to just revert here real fast. So the standard is going to show you all 72, but you're really wanting to make sure that at least those 24 priority items, there are scores entered for those. If you are participating in the pilot, you want to make sure and verify that the 25 SKBs, that those scores have been entered for that. So those are what you're looking for when you're generating that report. All preschool special education and early childhood education grant-funded programs are using the KReady system to enter scores, and they will be then transmitted to the Department of Children and Youth. Teachers must enter these scores for the spring window before the close of the window, May 14th at 11:59 p.m. on the 2024. So there is a reminder, like Ed stated earlier, is there is no manual submission. You do not need to report to EMIS or EAS. You just need to make sure your teachers are entering the scores into the system, because then that's how you're reporting. You don't manually have to actually report like you had in prior years.
We have videos on our site. I'd like to show you where those resources are so that you can get to them and have an opportunity to go through this material at your own pace. Ohio-K12.help. That's our landing page. And just click the Ready for Kindergarten online system support, and that will bring you to the support site for the KReady system. 2 important areas. The first is this section here for data managers. If you click on that, there you'll see all of the links and resources that were mentioned during this webinar. We've got information here, a whole walkthrough on how to reload your data, steps and information that we shared in this webinar. You'll see that kind of provided for you. We talked about formatting your data with leading zeros. So if you want to go back and refer to that, you can do so on this page. Again, there's a video that walks you through that information as well. If you do need additional assistance, if you scroll to the bottom, the very bottom of any page, you'll see this request support button. If you click on this button, it will bring you to the page where you can complete your information and submit a support request to our team, and we can respond accordingly. You just simply click on this link and select your program, find your program there. If it's not listed, if you go to the very bottom, you'll be able to also add that information if it's not listed there.
People are asking for what items they should be looking for when they're pulling the SKB ratings report. And this, you can find 2 different ways. You can also reach out to your teachers to make sure if they have written the scores down by using the score sheets that are available out on the site, or pull up when the teacher enters their information. I want to point out where these score sheets are available, and you can actually kind of see, depending on which one you're doing, whether it's the full version, the standard version, or the pilot version. So for the early learning assessment on the department site, if you select the early learning assessment for teachers, the resources you see are the forms. And I wanted to point these out because this also helps you as a data manager. You can actually go here as well, and you can kind of see which ones you're looking for. So they have the sample recording form for the pilot. This information, your teachers can use this as well, since they'll be entering scores at a later date. Let's say they write these down for each of their students. But here's where you want to find these forms, and that is going to help you when you're generating that scaled score report to see exactly which ones you are looking for. So I hope that helps to answer your question. So the SKB ratings report, she asked, maybe I missed something, but what do you do with this report? And it really just kind of goes back to what the report does. For you as a data manager, it's going to help you monitor what items have been completed, meaning what items have scores entered in the KReady system. For instance, it's coming close to, maybe let's say it's coming close to the deadline of May 14th. You want to make sure that all items that are the priority for each, the standard version and the pilot, are entered by your teachers for those students. So you're going to be looking at this report to see and make sure. And so I think I have, I just want to show a sample of one here. This is what a standard, the full version of ELA SKB report is going to look like. Everything in the very beginning is all your teacher student information. And then you have all of the actual items. It will show you all 72, but as you can see, there are scores written in for some. So you want to make sure that you are looking at the priority items. If there's more scores entered, that's okay, not a problem. But if it's coming closer to time and you see that a couple of your teachers haven't entered scores, that's where you're going to want to kind of reach out to those teachers and say, hey, got to get these scores entered by the 14th at 11:59 p.m. Another question here is, if you accidentally assigned a token instead of an incorrect one, so let's say you accidentally added the pilot to them instead of the full, or instead of the standard, I want you to reach out to the help desk. Only we can remove those data tokens for you. Just make sure you add your correct one and then reach out to us here at the help desk. We can then remove those. Just make sure you list your student's name and their SSID, and we can remove the incorrect token so the teacher doesn't see two different tokens there. The disability codes required, and are they included in the upload file? So if you just want to get your students in quickly, you can do just a required fields of the student file, but we do encourage you going back and making sure everything is correct. So yes, if you have a student that has a disability code, we do encourage you to make sure that you enter that in accordingly. And you can do that manually for your students, like we showed earlier, by just selecting the student, and then from here, selecting the disability code, and then making sure that this special ed IEP, IFSP, is marked as yes. Another question here is, what happens if we miss the window to enter scores? Are we able to go in and enter scores at a later date? Unfortunately, no. Once the window ends, the window ends. You cannot enter scores for that specific window. So for instance, the winter session just ended, and that ended on February 14th. If the scores weren't entered in at that time, that you can't go back and enter those. You can, though, move forward and make sure that they are entered in for your spring. That's what you can do at that point. What is the data token for the pilot? And you can see that listed at the bottom in red. However, I want to show you how to find that in the KReady system. And if you are in your KReady system as a data manager, select the left-hand side, select data collections. You are looking towards the bottom because it's the end of the school year. So we're looking at that spring. We've already done fall, we've already done winter. So you're looking for spring. There's the ELA full version, and then there's the pilot. And you're looking at this enrollment token. So this would be listed in that column, and that is what you would use, and that is where you can find it. And you don't get those, or they don't populate in the KReady system until it opens, the session opens. So for instance, this wasn't there on the 14th because the window hadn't opened yet. Now it had. Now it's open. So they will be located there. Someone asked, we have students that attend 2 centers and both need to give the ELA. How can we both enter scores?
The answer to programs that are sharing a student is the system is still going to generate a transfer request to that other location. That other location can ignore that transfer request, and then you will both be able to enter. The teachers in both programs can enter ratings for the child. If you want more information about that, you can reach out to us, because I do like to clarify that if a child is shared by 2 locations, there's still one line of data that's connected to that child. And the last data point entered is the one that will display on a report that's generated. So if teacher A at one location gives a rating for a specific skill, and then at the other school, maybe the child demonstrates the skill differently, and the other teacher enters a different rating for the same skill, it's the last rating entered that will show up on a report, unless the teacher is looking at a longitudinal report, which then the teacher does have the ability to look at longitudinal data. We're not covering that in today's session, but we're happy to show you where teachers can find that kind of resources around looking at student data within the system. But you can share the student.
We do have several folks asking questions about the pilot, being able to utilize the pilot during this window if they did not during the first.
We would recommend that you use the same data collection each time, but we cannot stop you. So if you did the full version of the ELA in the fall and you're just learning about the pilot and you want to use the pilot, you may do that. I would just say that if your teachers were entering ratings only for the priority items in the full version and the priority items in the pilot have some similarity, but they are a different subset of skills from the full tool. So you might have data from the fall that if you're not using it as a priority point for the spring, you wouldn't have a second data point for that, and it could get a little tricky when you're trying to look at student growth. You are allowed to use the pilot this time if that's what you would like to do.
There's also a question online regarding the ability to submit a support request.
Actually, we'll show how to do the web form. So when you go to the KReady site, you can, from this page, any of the pages at the bottom, you can request support. You can do a web form, and then as well as our telephone number is here, and our phones are actually on from 8:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. And if you select request support, what it does, it's going to take you to a quick web form and how to fill out that information. Sorry, my hamsters are rolling here. And you can fill it in that way. You can also give us a call between the hours of 8:30 and 3:30. You would select your district. And then from here, you would go ahead and enter your first name, last name, and all of the information that you need. And then once you're done, hit submit request. These are connected to us right away, and we get to those between the hours of 8 and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then, like I said, you can also give us a call.
There's a request to show the Excel sheet used for the bulk load information.
So this Excel sheet is the enrollment file. So this is the very last one you upload. You can do your teacher, your student one first if there hasn't been any changes. It's not necessary, but like I say, if you want to, if there have been changes, you want to do your users manually first, and then your students, and then do the files. But this is what the enrollment file looks like that you would fill out for the spring session.